They're going to sit here. Where do you want us? Where do you want us?
Which one do you want to sit? Let's see which comes out first, and then we'll do the other one. No, we sit in these chairs.
No, he wants us here.
You want to sit in the wheelchair?
He wants us here.
No, Bob, you sit in the other. Bob, you sit over here. Over here.
They can wait outside and talk.
Main scene come to order. Division 5 is once again in session. The Honorable José, Judge presiding.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
This is the case of the people of the state of California versus Erik, Galen Menendez, and Joseph Lyle Menendez. The record will reflect the defendants are present with counsel and the people are represented. Would the defendants please rise? Erik Galen Menendez.
Yes.
Is that your true and correct name?
Yes, Your
Honor. Joseph Lyle Menendez. Is that your true and correct name?
Yes, Your Honor.
Erik Galen Menendez, you are charged in count 1 with a violation of Penal Code Section 187A. Murder of José Menendez, a human being, for financial gain while lying in wait with a firearm. You are further charged in count 2 with a violation of Penal Code Section 187A, murder of a Maria Menendez, a human being, for financial gain while lying in wait with a firearm. You are further charged with special circumstances for which you could be sentenced to death. Do you?
Also, the people at this time are moving to release the contents of the affidavit. We've discussed this with counsel, and they'd also like an opportunity to brief that issue as well on the day of the continuance. So I don't have any difficulty with that.
Your Honor, we would, however, like to receive the documents so that we can prepare the matters for further proceedings on March the 26th, as well as prepare for a bail motion on behalf of Erik Menendez in this instant. That being the case, we would ask that the matters be provided to counsel immediately and to counsel only.
And that including the affidavit for the search warrant.
Understanding that this discovery is going to be released to counsel under the circumstances where they're going to have an opportunity to review it for purposes of these motions, and that it's not to be disclosed to any further counsel except those who are immediately operating with counsel, we have no difficulty in releasing this discovery.
It's our understanding that the matters will be released to us and only us, and that we will not be allowed to release them to anyone other than discussing them with our client.
In light of the representations and motions of counsel, the arraignment and plea in this matter is continued to March 26, 1990 at 2 p.m. It is further ordered that the affidavits be released to counsel for the defendants are each ordered not to discuss the contents, either directly or indirectly, of the sealed affidavits with anyone other than their clients without further court order. The matter will be continued also to the 26th of March for investigation regarding any potential conflict of interest. And, of course, for a determination of the status of the sealed affidavits, further motions, and any bail motions.
Your Honor, on behalf of Erik Menendez, the record should reflect that he will waive time till March the 26th for these purposes.
That will be the next matter for the court to request. Mr. Erik Galen Menendez, you have the right to have your arraignment and plea within 48 hours of your arrest, and your preliminary hearing within 10 days of your arraignment and within 60 days of your arraignment. Do you give up that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Counsel join.
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Shapiro. People join.
People join, yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Alhara.
May the record reflect that I am handing counsel.
Excuse me, we need to have a waiver as to Mr. Joseph Lyle Menendez.
We can do that.
Joseph Lyle Menendez, you have the right to have your arraignment within 48 hours of your arrest, your preliminary hearing within 10 days of your arraignment and plea, and within 60 days of your arraignment and plea. Do you give up that right?
Yes,
Counsel join?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Chaliff. People join.
People join.
Thank you, Mr. Alhara.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that I am handing the discovery of the people's case to counsel for Mr. Joseph Lyle Menendez and to counsel for Erik Menendez. And if counsel would just sign the receipt on that, I appreciate it.
The record will so reflect.
The record should also reflect that contained within these documents are a copy of the complaint.
Yeah.
Yes, the documents do carry a copy of the complaint.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Not at this
I
time.
think for the people,
Thank you.
Court will stand in recess on this matter until March 26th.
Quiet, please.
You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, do you recall actually going to shop with your brother prior to going to the jewelry store to get the Rolex watches and the money clips?
What do you mean by shop? I went there specifically to buy a sports jacket.
Okay. Was there any other purchases that you made that day besides the sports jacket?
I don't remember any.
Were you with your brother all the time that day?
I know I went to Bullock's with him because I didn't have any suits or any sports jackets or that.
You had indicated that you had bought a coat, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you have to buy some slacks to go along with the coat?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that I had slacks at my house. I know that I wore slacks on different occasions, but I just don't remember.
Okay. Do you recall pulling out cash at any one of those transactions to pay for the purchase that day?
I don't think so. It was an expensive coat. I don't think I would have paid in cash.
Is it your belief that credit cards were used, sir?
Probably.
Mr. Menendez, you had indicated that you believed the BBC stood for what?
And
Okay. Do you recall being asked on direct examination about what you believe BBC stood for?
not specifically.
Do you recall testifying that you believed Dr. Ozeel must have been referring to the British Broadcasting Company?
I remember doing that on cross.
And this movie that was discussed, you believed was on the British Broadcasting Company?
I don't know what he was referring to. It's in his notes exactly. I was just giving my best guess.
Now, would another one of your guesses be the Billionaire Boys Club?
I don't know what shows Dr. Ozeel watches, or what he was referring to there.
No.
I can only give you the only reason I can guess is by the language of when he says on the BBC, and so I don't know.
And in fact, what he was referring to is something that you had stated to him, that you had watched a movie on the BBC, correct?
No, that's not what he was referring to.
Now, isn't it true that you know the BBC to mean the Billionaire Boys Club?
The BBC
Yes.
are initials for Billionaire Boys Club.
There was an area here that was reserved.
Yes. Is that,
Yeah, that is, the initials BBC are for several things. One of them is Billionaire Boys Club, definitely.
do you recall on November 29th, 1989, having a discussion with Craig Signorelli about forming a group of 4 people?
It wasn't really a discussion. I was telling him an idea I had.
Okay. And you were saying that you wanted to form a group of 4 people that you could trust, correct?
Yeah, I specifically remember doing that. I was doing that on purpose.
And that these people would be working under you, and they would be making $1 to $2 million a year, correct?
At that point, I was just spinning my wheels. I didn't have any idea.
Do you recall Craig Signorelli say to you, kind of like in BBC? Do you recall that question?
Yeah, I recall that.
And do you recall your answer, kind of like in BBC, but that you know it's just everywhere? Do you remember making that statement?
Yeah.
Do you recall that you stated that you wanted to get something that would set you apart from the other people in this company?
No.
Do you recall talking about a Rolex watch, one that you would have to buy in a, I believe you put it, you'd have to order it. It's blue that fades into black. Do you remember making that statement relative to this group that you were going to form? Everyone would have to get this Rolex watch?
No. If you can show me.
May I approach, Your Honor? Okay. It's page A3 of 10. Of 10. Menendez, I'm going to show you a transcript. It's page A3 of 10 regarding the
Yeah, now I
conversation
remember.
that you had with Craig Signorelli on November 29th, 1989.
Yeah.
Did you take a look at this section?
Yeah, now I remember.
And when you were discussing this group of 4 people that would make $1 to $2 million, and you discussed having a Rolex watch, what were you talking about?
I was specifically talking about forming a group of people that you could trust, because I was trying to send Craig a message that I didn't trust him, and that I believed that he was telling people what I told him. And so I was saying, yeah, I wish, it wasn't something that I was actually planning on doing. I was saying, yeah, I wish I could form this company. I want to do this. These are some people who I can trust. And he said everyone should have a handshake. Everyone should wear something that is status, that sets them apart. And I was trying to say, I don't trust you. I think you're telling the police. And this is one of the things I was doing.
Mr. Menendez, were you going to start the British Broadcasting Company?
No, that wasn't an idea I had.
So what did you mean by the BBC?
That, That's what Craig said.
And you agreed with him, it was like the BBC. What did you mean by that?
The Billionaire Boys Club.
Okay. Now, you also made the statement, sir, that you know, and if you leave the group, fuck, I would not betray that group. What did you mean by that?
I was telling Craig that I didn't trust him and I thought he was betraying me.
And what would happen to those people that betrayed you?
I don't know. I was just making the statement to sort of tell him, you know, you're betraying me. But I'm not really a confrontational person like that, and I didn't know how to say it to him. So I was trying to give him the best message I could.
You were trying to threaten him?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I could never hurt Craig. I was just saying, basically, that I was hurt. I thought he was a friend of mine, and now I hear up in Santa Barbara that he's telling everyone what I told him. And so I'm trying to do my best now to convince him that I wasn't involved in the killing.
So you were mad at him because he was telling the truth, that you indeed were involved in the killing of your parents, correct?
No, I wasn't mad at him for telling the truth. I was mad at him for telling people something that I told him at a time when I wanted his help. And that's all.
Now, Mr. Menendez, Dr. Oziel had testified that you told him that you believed that you couldn't be connected to the crime because the guns were purchased in San Diego. You couldn't be connected to the guns. The prints in the house were your prints, etc. Do you remember that testimony?
Do I remember he testified to that, or is that what
Yes.
happened?
Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
And do you remember testifying in front of this jury that you believed from the first day that you would get caught? Do you remember that testimony?
What I said is that I believed from the moment after that I would get caught. There was too many things the police could find.
Do you recall, again, November 29th, 1989, in your conversation with Craig Signorelli, for counsel, it's B19 of 33, that you stated, I've known from the beginning, no clues, no one heard anything. And then again, at B22 of 33, in the same conversation with Craig Signorelli.
I'm going to object, Your Honor, misquoting the statement of the witness on the transcript.
Page 19.
B19 of 33, Your Honor, it's first big statement right there.
Very well, Your Honor. Do you remember making this statement, sir? I've known from the beginning, no clues, no one heard anything. People heard things that, and then unintelligible. Do you remember making that statement?
No. Could I?
Read out of context about the response in the next statement.
Well, his answer is no, he doesn't remember that. And I believe you wanted what the benefit.
Yeah.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember.
Okay, when you say you've known from the beginning, there were no clues, no one heard anything, what did you mean by that?
What I was saying is, after I tell him that I don't know who did it, and he's telling me, well, why don't you check it out? People, you should know, don't you want to find out who did it? And I say to him, Craig said, you're not going to check it out anymore? And I said, how am I going to check it out? And he says, I don't know. And I say, that's a good question. How can I check it out? I know they're not going to find anyone. I've known from the beginning, no clues. No one heard anything. People heard things that, and then it goes on about firecrackers in the middle of August.
Okay.
I wasn't referring to me, though.
Mr. Menendez, when you said, I know they're not going to find anyone, isn't that what you told Dr. Oziel too?
No, you're misunderstanding the two conversations. One in which I'm telling Craig, the reason I'm not going to go investigate myself is because they're not going to find anyone. And with Dr. Oziel, I told him that the police don't know anything, and that the only way they could find me was through the guns in San Diego.
Mr. Menendez, do you recall telling Craig Signorelli on November 29, 1989, regarding the people that committed this crime, the shooters of your parents? You stated, man, we're talking about special hitmen, special shotguns, and knew exactly what they were doing in and out of the house. No one saw anything, no one heard anything. And Craig Signorelli responding, doesn't make sense. And you responding, we're talking serious hitmen.
Yeah.
Now, you believed that you and your brother had done this in a way that you would not get caught, correct?
No.
And that's
Just
what
the
you're
opposite.
talking about.
No, you're just pulling it out of context again. Craig and I are again having a conversation, it's the same conversation, about the fact that nobody knows, and he keeps pressing me, well, don't you want to find out who did it? Aren't you going to find out who did it? And he's apparently trying to get me to say something because he's on tape. And I'm telling him, these were hitmen, I don't know who did it, no one heard anything, I'm not going to be able to find out who did it, these are serious people, they knew what they were doing, etc. And
Now,
that's
Mr.
what was
Menendez,
happening.
This statement that you make mirrors what Dr. Oziel said. You said that you didn't think you were going to get caught, and you didn't think there was any way for you and your brother to have to stand trial in this case. Isn't that correct?
Argumentative, ask the
No, it doesn't mirror what Dr. Oziel said in the slightest.
I have nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor, no question.
All right, thank you. You may step down.
This witness not be excused.
You may step down, sir. Thank you.
What do you believe was the originating cause of you and your brother ultimately winding up shooting your parents?
Me telling,
You telling what?
me telling Lyle that,
You telling Lyle what? Was it you telling Lyle about something that was happening?
my dad,
Okay.
my dad,
Your Honor, can I ask a leading question?
If you don't ask,
my dad,
Wait 1 second, Mr. Menendez. Okay, let me ask
no,
you-
he was in the process of answering, so there's no need to ask it.
Can you answer the question?
yes,
Okay, it was you telling Lyle what?
my dad had been molesting me.
Getting back to your tennis. When you would be playing, when you would be practicing, would your father be there participating in your practices?
In tennis?
Yes.
Not every time, but most of the time my dad was there. Anytime he could be there, he would be there.
And when you were playing in tournaments, was your father there?
Yes, or he would fly in, and a lot of times I remember I would start the first couple points, and then I'd see my dad show up in a business suit, having just arrived.
Would you be glad to see him?
Yes.
Did he make it more fun for you to be in tournaments? Or
No.
Why not?
Well, whenever my dad was around, it was very heavy pressure, and I preferred to be just with the coach. But for some reason, when I was away from my dad, I had trouble playing. And so I remember the semifinals of one big championship tournament with a rival that I had beaten earlier in the spring in front of my dad easily. This was a big match. There were like 50 people watching, and I lost 6-0, 6-0. And my coach looked at me like, oh my God, how are we going to tell your dad? He was like pale, and sometimes I just couldn't play if my dad was not there, and I don't know, sometimes it was the nerves of just having to explain to him the match.
What do you mean, explain to him the match? If your father wasn't there, would you have to tell him about the match?
Every game, exactly how the match progressed.
Now, when you say exactly how the match progressed, would you call your father at work or see him when he got home? How would you tell him?
I call him immediately. He wanted to know immediately.
So would he be at work?
He would normally be either at home or sometimes he would be. I guess at tournaments he was mostly at work. But I call him after practices, and I would be playing late, and he would get home and expect a call from either the coach or from me. Or we'd reach him at the office. His secretary would always say he's out to lunch, he's busy. As soon as he found out it was my tennis coach, oh, he just walked in, and then he'd want everything, you know, exactly the temperament.
Tell me what you would tell him.
He would talk to the coach first, and I could hear my coach saying, you know, he did real well. I know it was a close match, depending on whatever happened. Just describe the match, kind of, and then he'd say, you know, your father wants to talk to you, and Dad would ask me to have the coach leave the room so he could talk to me in private, and he would say, tell me what happened. You know, I heard this. What happened? I want to know. Why did this happen this way? As far as, to give you examples, like, he would say, you know, you elected to serve first, and I'd say yes. He'd say, okay. He said, did you go through the first 3 games like we arranged? Because he would have, like, exactly what I was supposed to do for, like, the first almost 25 points, where I would just have a set strategy. You know, sometimes it would go off during the point, but pretty much I would either serve and volley to the deuce court, stay back on the ad court. Then if it was 30-all, he'd have different strategies. And I'd explain to him how I followed those strategies, and he'd want to know why they didn't work out. And I'd do my best to explain in a way that didn't admit that my backhand was off or that I wasn't concentrating or things like that.
Now, would these be conversations that would last 2 or 3 minutes, or how long would you be explaining in detail what happened?
An hour and a half. About an hour and a half, because we'd also then have to go into what was happening tomorrow. He'd want to know exactly what I ate that day. Maybe it was the food that affected the match, and I would write out what I ate every time I was away from him, so we could chart whether, you know, only bananas and so on in the morning seemed to be a winning percentage, and so on. And I actually purchased a computer at one point that you could plug all these things in, and it would give you the percentages of what happened when you ate this or when you tried this strategy or how many unforced errors. And very, very, very technical with my dad.
At one point, were you the #1 player in the Middle States Tennis Association?
Yes.
Now, what is the Middle States Tennis Association? What area does that cover?
That's the 5 states, most in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Delaware.
And how old were you when you were #1 in that area?
I was 17, I think. My first year of the 18 and unders.
So everybody eligible to play in that would have been 18 or younger.
Right.
And you were 17 when you won.
Right.
And do you remember when you won that? Do you remember that period of time?
I remember the year.
Do you remember, was your dad proud of you? Had you finally done enough?
He was proud of me, but by the time I could get to be #1, I mean, we were thinking nationally, and nationally I was not where he wanted me to be. So we didn't really worry about like the 5 states thing. We concentrated on the nation, what the other players were doing, and I was having trouble nationally, and that was always on his mind.
So this wasn't a great moment for you then? I mean, making a #1 ranking in the Middle States Tennis Association was not that important. Did it seem to be?
Rephrase the question, please.
Yeah, did it seem to be important? I mean, did your dad seem to be real happy about this? Or?
He really didn't say much about it. It just happened. The rankings came up. I noticed I was #1, but again, we were thinking nationally. It was like, you know, so what? And yeah, that was an upsetting year because we had lost again Family of the Year, tennis for New Jersey, to a family called the Leshleys, and my dad was pissed. And my mother called in and, you know, to complain and the whole thing because my brother had a very good year that year also. But, you know, we lost that, so he was very upset. Basically was upset with my brother for not having been #1 also, which would have clinched it. And he was like 5 or something, 4 or 5.
So your brother was #4 or 5. If he'd been #1, it would have clinched it, meaning you would have gotten the Tennis Family of the Year?
Right.
Why don't you pick a point here when it's convenient, we'll take a break.
One more question and then
Okay.
we'll take a break. Did your sports activities seem to take up all of your dad's free time?
It took up any time he wasn't working. Yeah.
And did your mother ever express any resentment about that?
Oh, yes, many, many times.
What would she say?
She would say many things. She would say that I ruined her life, and she would explain to me why and how I ruined her life.
What would she tell you about why and how you ruined her life?
Well, if she wasn't in a tantrum and she was just speaking normally, she would just explain all the things that she could have been, an actress, broadcasting. I learned about her aspirations with disappointments with not being a child actress and wanting to go on in some acting or broadcasting sense. And she told me that she had a job in New York to be a hostess at a restaurant, that she said she could make almost $50,000 a year, and that then suddenly she had gotten pregnant, that she had not wanted to get pregnant, that my dad had then forced her, well, gave her an ultimatum: either you leave or you stay home with my son and quit. And so she chose to stay home, and essentially her life was pretty much ruined from that point on. But then we would have more discussions about how much money was being spent on my tennis, all my dad's time on my tennis, who cares, and then I would hear about the lessons she couldn't have, the things that she couldn't have. And then there would be other times when she was in a tantrum. And then it would just come out very, in a rage.
What would come out in a rage?
She would be throwing things and screaming and flailing and wanting and trying to hit you and saying that you're a bastard. And she cursed a lot. And that wait till your dad gets home, I'll tell him the things that you didn't do today, and I wish you were never born, and why can't you be like your brother, and what's the matter with you? And then I would try to say something. She would say, shut up, I don't want to hear it. You're stupid, I hate you.
How old were you when you heard things like, "I wish you were never born"?
So, 7.
Thank you. That's the end of that area now.
Okay, we'll take a recess, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll resume at 15 minutes after the hour. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it, and we'll resume at 3:15.
Why did you kill your parents?
Because we were afraid.
Do you have a lot of nice memories from your childhood?
No.
What was wrong, in your opinion, with the way that José Menendez wanted these kids coached?
I thought it was cruel.
I'm sorry?
I thought it was cruel
Okay. Why, how was it cruel?
because they had to physically suffer.
Lyle came down, and he was asking if he could, I thought he was there to say goodnight, and he started asking me if he could sleep down there because Kathy had already gone and there was 2 single beds.
Okay, and what did you tell him?
Initially I pretty much just brushed him off because I wasn't taking him seriously.
And what happened next?
He proceeded to indicate to me by touching himself down and saying that his dad and him had been touching each other down there.
I just told him that I didn't want to do this and that it hurt me. And he said that he didn't mean to hurt me. And he loved me.
Was that important to you, that he loved you?
Yes, very.
I remember at one time he stuck me with a tack and it really went far into me and I sort of went, and he just twisted his head around and looked right through me, and it was scary.
It was very much of like a Jeopardy setting in regards to Jose drilling the kids with questions of the day and only of that day.
What do you mean questions of the day?
Well, it would be to where newspaper articles, such as certain encyclopedias, different events that happened throughout the day, and an answer was needed quickly. He had to have an answer. He had to have an answer.
And, again, they're coming this way. We have both Erik and Lyle Menendez's attorneys, and here they come. All four. Let's see, we have on the far left in the red suit, that is Terry Towery, that is Lyle Menendez's attorney, and next to her, Leslie Abramson in the mauve suit with the blonde hair, and walking up to the podium, Charles Gessler, that is Lyle Menendez's attorney, and we'll see if we can get some kind of statement from them. Mr. Gessler, could you please give us your reaction to the verdict? To the microphone, sir.
Front of the mic, please.
My reaction right now is... Are we happy? My reaction is one of tremendous relief. It's hard to know if the relief makes up for the tremendous strain of waiting for the verdict to come in, but I'm very relieved that it was a life verdict. I think that is the proper verdict given the findings that they made at the guilt phase, that this should not have been a death case, and I'm very relieved that it came out to be the proper verdict of life without parole.
How did your client speak with the jurors, and what did they say?
We had a chance to talk to the jurors. I talked to them as people, not about the case, and I'm not going to tell you what they said. That was just people to people. A chance to be people instead of attorneys and jurors again to each other. Lyle is relieved because he wants to live. You know, life without parole is not something to be looking forward to. So you can't say that he's happy, but certainly he's relieved that it's life and not death. I think a lot of the difference was the difference in the way the defense was allowed to be presented this time from the way it was the first time. No one can ever say what makes a difference sometimes between one case and another. The individual jurors see things differently. The evidence is presented differently. It's viewed differently. And results sometimes are different.
Can you have Leslie Abramson, please, about Erik? Leslie?
Could you to help everybody, if you'd identify yourself on tape, it's easier.
Yeah, I'm Charlie Gessler from the Los Angeles County Public Defender's Office.
Oh, I'm so excited. Can you please explain your reaction?
Well, it's tremendous relief. I'm short, so you have to do this. Lower the stand. I'm not touching that thing, guys. You get electrocuted. Touch that. That's right. I know. All right. It's not fair for my own former cameraman to ask me to look that way. Oh man, what's a win? You know, they're going to spend the rest of their lives in prison. On the good side, I will say that they're both such considerable human beings that they will find a way to be productive. And in fact, some of the jurors were saying that too. It was their expectation that they would both find a way to contribute to society even if they're in prison for the rest of their lives. And I truly believe that's true of them, where I could not say that that's true for most people in their situation.
Did the jurors indicate there was any one most persuasive element that caused the verdict?
Now let me just say that we have not debriefed this jury at all, that we were just sharing with them how difficult this case was for them as well as for us, how emotional, how torn they felt. They are very, very nice, decent people, all of them. Wait, I'm trying to do one at a time. You already got one. Now, Warren gets one, then you get another one. Yes, Warren. And then Tony, even though she hasn't been that good to me this time around. But go ahead, Warren.
What was it like waiting, not knowing what that verdict was going to be for the last 3 or 4 days?
Well, I was asking people if there was some other way to spell hell besides H-E-L-L, because you just live in absolute hell. When any verdict comes in and you're waiting for a verdict, you can't do anything else but focus on that. And the worst time of all is after you know there is one, and you know that prayer no longer can help you because someone has signed that verdict form. So it's terrible.
How do you refer to them as
No.
considerable human beings?
Oh, please. I mean, anybody asked that question does not understand that people are not just what they do, they are what they are. Tony, did you have a question? No, my reaction to the original verdict can only be described as despair. There was no anger. I can't be angry with a jury that follows the instructions that they're given and analyzes the evidence the way they see it. I mean, I'm not an objective observer of facts. They are. It was just merely what the reality of what it meant was that never, ever would either of them ever have a life. And since they never had one, it doesn't seem fair in a kind of moral sense, but I can't say it's unfair in a legal sense.
Can you address the issue of Dr. Vickery's notes, Leslie?
I could, but I'm not going to. Wait a minute, Mary Jane.
Leslie, I hate to ask you this, but could you please explain to us what happened with Dr. Vickery?
I'm glad you hate to ask that, because I'm not going to answer it just now. Let me just say that I want to be able to assess what this record looks like. I mean, one of the things that has been very, very depressing to me ever since this whole disaster struck was how quick people are to judge you guilty when all you've done is try to assert your right to not have to answer a question that day in that forum. Because as most of you know, the next day we were in court, I withdrew the assertion of the Fifth Amendment. I was advised by a lawyer who's a very good lawyer who had not seen a single piece of paper, a single word in a transcript. He doesn't know what's going on. And unlike some of my clients, I'm a client who takes my lawyer's advice. So I did that, and then I have watched people who claim to be my friends and colleagues accuse me of everything under the sun. I mean, in the press right now, I am tried, convicted, in jail, disbarred, and in permanent disgrace. And that is really hard to take when you're under a gag order, number one, and when, more importantly, your client's rights are far more important than your own reputation or public image. And I absolutely could not say anything on that record openly in front of the district attorney to refute what Dr. Vickery was blurting out, obviously because he was caught by surprise when he shouldn't have been. I can refute all of it, but I'm not going to take this forum because it's a long, fairly complicated explanation. But I can unequivocally say I did not violate any laws. I did not violate any ethical strictures. I doubt very much that I would ever be disbarred for such a thing. I mean, I can't see it, and I never could. Leslie, you've never been a person at a law school first, but how difficult was it to watch Mr. Levin essentially take over after that? It was actually a great relief. If you want to know the truth, I have never, ever thought, that emotionally I could make a penalty argument on behalf of Erik Menendez. I always felt I'd fall apart because I care a great deal about him. I have been, you know, his first friend for 6 years, and you know, you cannot argue for your best friends. You cannot argue that kind of thing. Can you imagine getting up there and asking someone to spare the life of your child?
We're going to break away
really
from
too
Leslie
hard. So
Abramson, Eric's attorney now, and go to the picture at the bottom of your screen and District Attorney Gil Garcetti, who will be speaking for the prosecution. Let's go there live.
As long as I've been the district attorney, I've said that this case was a first-degree murder case with special circumstances. The jury has agreed. We also felt it was appropriate that we ask the jury to recommend death. The jury has concluded that life in prison without the possibility of parole is sufficient punishment. The important thing I think to remember here is that the jury has convicted the Menendez brothers of first-degree murder with special circumstances, and as a result of that, they will spend the rest of their lives in prison. When people feel that justice is done, it affects them in a very basic way. I think everyone, deep down inside, yearns for justice. It's a very important, basic feeling concept that we all have. When they feel that justice is done in a particular case, it renews faith in governmental systems, it renews faith in life. We believe that most people in this county, perhaps even in this country, now believe that there was justice in this case. I'm going to thank publicly 3 of the people that were involved in this case. Dave Kahn, after I introduce him, will thank all the others. But to my right is Dave Kahn. To my left, Carol Nahara. Les Zoller from the Beverly Hills Police Department is to her left. I want to thank them on behalf of all people in the County of Los Angeles for the excellent work that they did in this case. And it just was not the work that you saw in the courtroom. There was much, much work. Certainly, Les, you've been involved from the very beginning. For many years, that there was a tremendous effort made by all to seek justice, to seek the truth. We accomplished that in this case. I want to also thank the 2 prosecutors who handled this case the first time, Pam Bozanich and Lester Kuriyama, the 2 excellent prosecutors who did an excellent job. From their efforts, we learned a tremendous amount, and that enabled us to seek justice and to gain the justice that we have. Permit me now to introduce you again to Dave Kahn. David will introduce the others that have been really a very important part of this effort, seeking justice, seeking the truth. We've been, once again, successful in doing it. David?
Thank you, Herb. I would also like to begin by thanking Detective Zola of the Beverly Hills Police Department. I've had the pleasure to work with him now for 2 years, and he has tirelessly pursued justice in this case since 1989. He was the investigator then at the crime scene. He was the investigator right up until the last minute here in the courtroom. So I'd like to thank the Beverly Hills Police Department for the outstanding investigation that they did in this case. I would also like to thank Gil Garcetti. 2 years ago, Gil Garcetti stood before you and he told you that this is a first-degree murder case and it would be pursued as a first-degree murder case. And I would like to thank him for the opportunity that he gave Carol Nahara and I to pursue this case. It was at a time when many people were suggesting perhaps this case was too complex. Perhaps justice would never be served in this case. Perhaps juries would not be able to see the truth in this case and return with a verdict of first-degree murder. And yet what we have seen here in the verdict of the jury 30 days ago was that they understood this case, that they were more than capable of evaluating the evidence in this case and reaching a just verdict. So I'd like to thank Mr. Garcetti for giving us the opportunity to present this case and to seek justice in this case rather than a plea bargain or resolving the case in some other way. The verdict of the jury today for the sentence of life imprisonment, justice has now been served. I would like to also thank several people in the private sector who generously contributed their time and their effort and their talent to assist in the verdict that we have achieved in this case. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Don Vinson of Decision Quest, who assisted us in the jury selection in this case. He provided us with insight and guidance into selecting the right type of a jury that would be necessary to achieve justice in this case. But Dr. Don Vinson did more than assist us in the presentation of a case before a jury that would be able to follow the evidence and come back with a just verdict. He assisted us in putting together a winning team. Don Vinson introduced us to John Martel of San Francisco, an attorney in San Francisco who assisted us in the pre-trial strategy sessions and played a very important role in developing our ultimate strategy in this case. And we would also like to thank Dr. Roger McCarthy of Failure Analysis in Menlo Park.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.